Hello, everyone. Thanks for dropping in again to the Whole Body podcast with Linda. That's me. I am very fortunate today to have a lovely friend of mine, Angela Bennett, all the way from Melbourne. Her business is called Aligned Living Coaching, and Angela has a wealth of information to share with us from her experience through NLP and wellness, all the way backwards to horse training or horse coaching, and how she weaves her skill through the world with all of her many talents. So over to you, Angela, to share with us what you do and who you are.
Thanks for having me, Linda. I'm excited for this chat. But just quickly, I'm in Canberra.
Oh, Canberra. Sorry, I always picture you in the hills of Melbourne for some particular reason.
Yeah, I don't know. That must be some other Angela.
I don't know many Angelas, but anyway,
Okay.
Angela from Canberra. Good try.
It's not a hugely popular name. Yeah, so what do I do? Well, I do a lot of coaching using NLP and hypnosis. I guess the people I coach mainly are women. Um, so I have people who come to me from the writing part of my world. That's a lot about anxiety and confidence. Interestingly, it is women who are quite often hitting perimenopause and menopause. And we've spoken about this before, haven't we? It's about that anxiety, that weird anxiety that just seems to come from nowhere once you hit that time. But I also do, just like life coaching, right? So goal setting, planning, it's getting themselves out of the weeds and sort of trying to create that future vision and head towards it. In terms of NLP, I do a lot of timeline or time-based techniques to help release trapped emotions that are stuck on an event. So that's sort of what I do in that space. And in terms of my horse riding, well, I've been a horse rider. I mean, one of my eldest sisters chucked me on her horse when I was still in nappies, so there was pretty much no hope for me then. that was that. Maybe it wasn't my choice. Who knows? I don't know. But anyway, maybe I was conditioned into horse riding. But whatever, I love it. Horses are amazing animals, and I've done that for my whole career actually. It's taken me to up and down the Australian East Coast, and I've also worked in Southeast Asia, Thailand and Malaysia. So had fun doing that, and now I guess I'm steering more towards into that mindset, changing your thoughts, self-development. I think self-discovery is a way I really like to think about it. I listen to Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza a lot about conditioning, all the conditioning and programming, all those beliefs we carry around. Lots of them aren't really ours. And helping people undo those and actually get back to who they really are at their core.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So can I ask, what is it about horses that you feel makes them so special? I know horsey people just love horses, and I've always been
Yeah.
see what that connection is, what
Yeah.
you like.
Yeah, it's so funny because whenever a horsey person, we could be any age, whenever we drive past a paddock somewhere with horses, we're always like, "Oh, horses out the window," like our inner 5-year-old coming out. We've probably got our own horses, right? But we're very excited to see horses anywhere. So it's I don't know, you're definitely bitten by the bug. I can't think of the poem or the saying now or even who wrote it, but it's something along the lines of, horse riding is not a habit that you pick up lightly. It is all consuming. Because it's not like playing tennis. You can't put the racket and the ball away in the cupboard. You know, it's not soccer. Again, you can't put the ball away. It's a living, breathing thing. So it's really that connection with that animal. And horses are used a lot in therapy.
Actually, I was
So
going to.
they're hugely emotionally intelligent. I think science in animal behavior is proving a lot of what old school horsemen and horseman experience knew anyway, intuitively, just from watching the animal. I think the attraction is it's such a large, graceful, magnificent animal, and it could do some serious damage to us quite easily.
Oh, yes.
And they choose not to. And obviously, I'm not talking about animals in abusive ownership, because then they will defend themselves. Um, but it's that they choose to be with you. They're incredibly curious by nature, horses,
Mm.
and they're really playful, and they read people very well. I mean, I think animals read body language and energy very well anyway, because they don't have speech, right? So it's how they communicate, and it's how they survive. They have to be able to see what's going on about them, and they've got to be able to read the room. So when you're sitting on a horse, it it's borrowing freedom, as the saying goes, when riding a horse. And it's pretty magical how you can communicate with them in a way that isn't force. And that is the job of the rider, to
Mm.
learn that. And that is a lifelong journey. The old masters will say that in developing yourself as a rider with your horse and whatever other horses you come through in your life, that they will teach you who you are.
Mm.
So, and that goes with that saying that your horse is your mirror, and they will just reflect back to you who you are, how you are being. So not just on a biomechanical level, but intention wise and energy wise too. Um, yeah, so there's just something really magical about it when you're sitting on a horse and you can ask it to do these things that you've trained through just repetition and patience, and it will willingly do that for you, um, on such a large, powerful animal.
Mm-mm. They are pretty big, aren't they? They're pretty big.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
My husband makes me laugh because we go down to Margaret River every now and then. We go to a place that you can hire horses. They take you on a trek, and the horses are all ex-polo horses, so they're really smart and very, know their job, and they do what they do. And Bernie always thinks that he's a master horseman when he gets down there. And off he goes cantering across the paddocks, and I'm terrified because I don't actually canter or trot. I just sit. And off
yeah,
he goes, and the horses just go with him, and they seem to know that they're not going to hurt him. They're going to bring him back. They're not going to
yeah,
pull off or whatever. So he comes back in one piece, but it always makes me laugh that the horse seems to know him more than he knows the
yeah,
horse.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
you're
Well,
one.
there's that definitely two-way trust.
Yes. Well, he's got a lot of trust for something he knows nothing much about. So,
Might just be that blissful ignorance, right?
yeah, that's what he's got. He's got that, and it works. It
It
works.
does. Yeah, yeah, it does. Absolutely.
So, in your bio you sent to me about our little chat today, you talked about NLP, wellness, neuroscience. What is your neuroscience? What chapter of your life is that covering?
Well, that's the NLP, I think, really, because NLP is neuro linguistic programming,
Yes.
um, created by Richard Bandler, and oh my God, and his other name's gone right out of my head.
Come
We'll
back.
just we'll
It was
just blame that, and John Grinder and Richard Bandler. And part of it is literally like programming a living computer.
Because people always say to me, what is NLP? And I'm always kind of
Yeah.
stuck with words, as I have dabbled in it myself. But when
Yeah.
I said to you that question, what is NLP? What would your answer be?
So I think the simplest way to explain it is that it's a pattern interrupt. So it's like a circuit breaker for your brain.
Mm,
So your brain is already running on a loop. Well, actually, it's your unconscious mind, which has already taken in a lot of the patterns and conditioning between ages 0 and 7.
right, that's young, isn't it?
It's young. At that point, we don't have very good executive function. So we don't really know what's good information, what's poor information.
Mhm.
And when events happen and we feel a certain way as a response to that, and then we create a meaning around that.
Mm,
And humans are meaning making machines, and it's not always a beneficial meaning, right? Like typically like, oh, if I don't get a high score on the exam, that must mean,
yeah.
and my parents get angry or my teachers angry, that must mean I'm a failure.
Mm-mm.
I'm no good. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy, and so on and so on. So it's a way to pattern interrupt those old pathways. So those old neural pathways, which we run every day, lots of it unconsciously, some of it consciously. And if you think about a pathway, so have you ever seen a paddock that's had sheep in it?
Yep. Yes.
And some pathways are really well worn, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the pathway that's really well worn in our brain. Now, it
Mhm.
doesn't mean there aren't other pathways there, they're just overgrown. So
Okay.
we interrupt the pattern, and the pattern interrupt jumps you, it kind of knocks you out of that well-worn pathway and onto another one. And we start to build and strengthen a new pathway
Right.
with a focus towards what we do want. So that's the programming part, really. We're actually we're literally, in very basic terms, we're installing a new program.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
And what kind of situations could you use that in?
I think really simply is changing state. So if your thoughts are running away with you, which let's face it, this happens for all of us, it's a very human thing. And we have a negativity bias. So we're replaying that conversation in our head or that event in our head. So we're either in the past or we're going forward in the future, thinking about some terrible outcome that might happen. And we're going over and over and over. So we're just in that loop.
Yep. I've been there. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the pattern interrupt is going to create a doorway, a gateway out,
Yeah.
so that we can change some different thinking. That pattern interrupt can cause a pause moment, which creates awareness. And if you can start to notice when you've been ruminating on something, if you can create a pause moment long enough to think, oh, I just realized I was thinking about that thing again.
Mm-mm.
But there's no end to it. There's never a solution. There's never any suggestion to move beyond the loop, to
Mm.
go forward. So that's a great place to start. We can start there. And it's funny, I put a post up the other day about just creating sort of a circuit breaker when you find yourself looping, 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 and to give you that moment, you can actually say something completely bonkers to yourself like banana pants. And it's got to be something, right? It's got to be something a bit, yeah, a bit weird and off the wall. So it's a phrase that is useful to come up with in the beginning, and you can absolutely use banana pants, because if you suddenly interrupt a loop pattern with banana pants, what does your brain do?
It kind of goes into disarray and thinks, hold on.
It goes, wait, what? What?
Yeah.
So it can knock you out.
Yeah.
That's your little window there where you can think, oh, okay, oh, right. Now I realized I was ruminating on a past thing about that terrible thing that happened
Yeah.
with no solution.
Yeah.
So what takes me forward and out of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we can take that type of thing and put it together with an anchor which will allow a person to feel different physiological states or an emotional state, which could be, joy or confidence. Or so we actually not only shift the thinking, we actually shift the mood they're experiencing as well. Yeah.
Wow.
And then it's repetition, like anything, right? You don't just learn these little tips in one go. You have to keep practicing them.
Yeah. Right. To get the pathway in.
Yeah, that's right. Until you create that as a new habit, there are some tools in NLP that the change is pretty instant.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so the deeper layer tools, and those changes can be instant and quite profound, quite significant. And then there are those sort of simpler tools to start training your brain, that just require a little bit of practice. They're just everyday things you can do simply.
All right. That sounds very encouraging. Have you had an amazing story that you've seen someone go through a transformation or a change of state or something that has really impacted on themselves, on their lives, the way they do things?
Yeah, this was actually a horse rider.
Uh-huh.
So, and it's interesting how the knock-on effect this has in their world. So typically they come to me for an issue in the horse riding. It's usually anxiety and a loss of confidence. So we addressed that with an anchor at the moment where she usually felt the most anxiety. So an anchor is something where we ask you to remember a time when you felt most confident, because that's how she wanted to feel. She wanted to feel confident and carefree and on top of the world. So we recalled memories where she felt like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we put those into her body. So she recalled them. And as you recall it, your body starts to remember, right? So you can bring this on right now. If you so your audience can right now just close their eyes,
Let's do this. Yep. Closing my eyes.
and we'll just do a really quick one.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine you've got in your hand now, it can be your left hand or your right hand, whichever is best for you. You've got a lemon segment. It's beautiful and yellow. You can smell the citrus. Ah, it's fresh and smells like spring and summer. And now you're going to bring that lemon up to your mouth and take a huge bite out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can feel that juice flooding into your mouth. And what's the reaction? And then open your eyes when you're ready.
It's lovely.
Yeah, so you like it.
Yeah.
Even when I was saying it, my cheeks were puckering, because
For
I
some,
love the smell of lemon and a little bit of lemon, but a whole bite, I was like, oh,
oh,
it's so sour, right?
some of them aren't too bad.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of tuned into the juiciness,
Yeah.
so tuned into the juice and the summery feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can feel that in your body, right?
Yeah.
But did you actually physically bite into a lemon?
No. No.
No.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Yeah. And this is the power of visualization. And Olympic athletes do it all the time.
Yeah.
High performance people do it all the time. So your brain can't decipher what's real and what's not.
Because I've heard that people who are in high performance sports or, might be getting ready to speak to 300 people on a stage actually visualize themselves
Yeah.
over and over. They repeat this over and over to get the skill in their mind. They know they can do it. Is
Yeah,
that something that you know about?
absolutely. And it works every time.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that's something we use when we do a tool called the anxiety model,
Mm.
which is a bit different from the one I'm using, the one I started giving the example about. But we also do it with future goal setting and things like that too, when we do time-based techniques. That's all a bit of a longer discussion, but it is really powerful. And that is why when you are having all those negative thoughts, you feel it in your body.
Mm.
You are creating the feeling. Then the feeling feeds back into the thought. So you have the thought again and you create more feeling, right? So again, what we want to do is pattern interrupt. So this rider, we had her feel all that confidence. She had a really strong memory. She brought it all up. She flooded the feeling into her body. And then we anchored that with a word for her. Now, the other way we can anchor is by a physical touch. It could be when the feeling surges in your body, you can touch your earlobe, you can press a finger together. But usually we try to attach a physical feeling with it. With her being a rider, she might have hold of reins and a whip, and it just wasn't practical to do a touch.
Yeah.
So we built in a word anchor. So whenever she said this word, her anchor word, her feeling would trigger that feeling again.
Mm.
And it worked very well. And the confidence she gained from that, and then she used that in other days, areas of her life, whenever she felt unsure and she needed a confidence boost. She used her anchor word, triggered that feeling, to the point where months later, she had made some big changes in her life around work. Her husband had noticed how differently she was, kind of moving through the world. So, and that was just, a small tool of what we can do. But I hope it also shows actually how enormously powerful we are when
Yeah.
we learn to use this the right way, in a way that benefits us.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I know we've got more in our brain than we know, more than we like. I think we use like 2% of what we're capable of doing, or something ridiculous. There's a number, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I think the number going around a while ago was 10% as a generally accepted thing. I think with all the development in neuroplasticity, etc., that might have changed now. But yeah, there are a large part is untapped. It's an untapped resource.
Do you think that NLP is a little bit like hypnotherapy, or are they two separate things?
They're similar in a way. They're definitely similar in that they work with the unconscious mind, for
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
And I think I use them a little together. So in my hypnosis, I use just light trance to reinforce what I've done with that NLP. That's how I use my hypnosis currently.
Yeah.
I think the further down the hypnotherapy training and rabbit hole I go, uh, then I think that might shift a bit. But I think they're very similar. There's a big crossover.
Mm-mm-mm. And I know from all the training that I have to do and I choose to do and I want to do, there's a lot of training that goes into these skills, isn't it? So I think I saw on the net the other day that you could become a nutritionist in 12 days. I thought, oh man, what's all this doing to the word nutritionist these days? But I've spent so many hours and so much money getting to where I am to give me the skills that I need. You have done the same. You've done years of training for this, haven't you? It's not just a thing you picked up last June and ran with.
No. No, that's right. I think what I did in terms of formal training has been more recent
Yep.
in terms of the certification, but even that was, I did it alongside the life coaching certificate, so that was 2 years,
Yep.
and quite in depth, and including a little extra in wellness coaching. And then the NLP and hypnosis practitioner training was immersive at the end. So it is 9 days
Oh yes, it is.
of 12-hour days,
Yes.
and you are working with the other students there. But importantly, you go through your own breakthrough.
Yeah, that was my next question. So the
Yeah,
Angela Bennett that we're talking to today is
yeah.
much different from the Angela Bennett we might have spoken to even even 5 years ago.
Polar opposite, complete opposite.
Yeah,
5 or 6 years ago, I was in an absolute state, and that had taken time to get there
yeah, it
as
all
I as as I gave more and more of myself away,
yeah,
right? Trying to fit in and please everybody and do all the things, right? To keep everybody happy.
yes.
And it was actually my horse who really made me sit up and take notice and go, oh, I better do something about this. So, what I would say, yeah, I'm totally different. And the lovely thing is every time I go back and do some training, which I try to do a breakthrough, a little breakthrough, a big breakthrough. I've done pretty much every 12 months. Um, Recently, I've been able to do that quite regularly because you uncover another layer, and
Yeah.
you just keep working through the layers of conditioning, and your unconscious mind stores all the long-term memory and everything you kind of shove aside. And it's like the attic or the garage, isn't it? I'll just chuck that in there, and I'll close the door. And
Yes.
yeah, and I won't look in there, but actually that's what needs to come out. So I would say, yeah, very different. Boundaries are stronger. I'm way more unbothered by a lot of things. Um, I think I've reclaimed myself and self-confidence.
Good. Yeah.
And I think the confidence that comes now, it's different, it's more grounded. So there's that um idea of being self-possessed. It is self-actualization and sovereignty and all those kind of, it's that top end of Maslow's hierarchy, right? But it's very different. There's no ego. So there's no wounded ego. It's not coming from fear and anger, which comes out in a different way. And I would say that what you're seeing now is who I was at my core at 5 years old.
Ah, nice. Yeah,
And
nice.
that's who I am now, right? That joyful 5-year-old. I just have way more adult responsibilities, which is not as much fun, but that's okay. So, damn it. But yeah, so big shifts. And the funny thing is you then get excited about going to do more.
Ah, yes,
You,
because you can
you,
see.
yeah.
Wonderfulness. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, when can I do my next? What else can I uncover and bring up to be looked at and acknowledged? Yeah.
Finding
Uh,
the sparkly jewels and working with them and finding out what's inside of them. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it is.
So if you were looking for an ideal client, what kind of people would be ready to work with you or you with them?
Look, I think people who are committed to the change. So, um, yeah, because you do have to walk through the valley of death. The long night, long dark night of the soul, all of that, it's a thing.
Mm.
You got to go through it. And the first time you start to go through it, because there's typically a fair bit you haven't acknowledged in your life. Um, there's tears, there's swearing, if you like, there's whatever that needs to come out, but it's knowing that I'll hold a safe space for you and actually letting that out. That is what that is, looking at it, acknowledging it, that is the release, right? That is the letting go. It's kind of simple. It's simple, but it's not easy. Yeah. So it's people who are, you got to be ready for the change. If you are not committed at getting uncomfortable, then you are actually not, possibly not uncomfortable enough in your life yet. You're not at that point where you're like, I cannot do this anymore, and I will take any further uncomfortableness to get through to the other side. You kind of have to be at that point because, when we start to go deeper, there's a process to getting that. We don't just start with a client and go deep straight away, wham, bang, thank you, ma'am. There's a process where we unpeel a few layers first and start to prepare for the deeper work. So if they get to one or two sessions and are not really committed, they'll never actually, they would have definitely learned some things that will help them, but they won't get that big, significant, life-changing shift. Yeah. And then I think that's kind of what my signature programs are around. But I also do, just life coaching sessions, which are just one off, and that's when you might just need a way forward. So you're really just looking for that devil's advocate to ask you the right questions to help you sort of formulate a plan and get going.
The power in the question, right? Because you don't know to ask yourself that question. And someone
Yeah.
as a devil's advocate or outside of you just thinks of the question and it is really powerful. I've been in situations like that where people have asked that question of me and I've gone, oh, all right, well, and it's a little hiccup that you have to get over. But it also I think as well, from my perspective and for the way that I've dealt with change and moving myself forward, is I hold a fair bit of fear around having these changes. And, have sleepless nights when I'm coming up to my appointment or whatever I'm doing. But at the end of the day, it's not really that bad. Like it's just a little question that someone asks you and you go, oh, if that all that was, like that's been upsetting me for so long. And really that's all that was. It's quite an amazing big little step to take, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what I mean about it's simple, but it's not easy.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because and then we do build it up to be a bigger thing than it is. I mean, that's us, just being human again.
Mm-mm-mm.
And actually when you're in the moment and you just let it come up and you are guided through a reframe, a perspective change, then afterwards it is like that. It's like, oh, okay.
It's a way, it's a freedom, but it's a
Yeah.
way of loving yourself a little bit more,
Lifetime.
because you've beat yourself up about this thing for so long. Um, Looking at it from whatever perspective you've been looking at it, I'm going to use this example. I have been teaching at a gym, and every now and then I'm called in to cover the class for the older, the 70 to 80-year-old customers.
Mm.
Those customers, those people are so supportive of each other, so welcoming and warming into the class. There's no judgment. I don't really know what I'm doing a lot of the time. I kind of make it up on the run, but there's no expectation of anything being perfect. And perhaps I don't know whether or not for me in my life and maybe my age group, I don't know whether it's a generic age thing that you expect things to be more perfect than they are, and you can sometimes beat up on yourself if they're not, feel like, because they're such calm, level-headed people. They just do their thing and there's no fuss. Where I know that if I teach a younger group and I quite don't know what I'm doing, or I make a mistake with the word or something, there's a few scowly looks and a bit of a judgment coming back. It's interesting to see the difference with the dynamics of the age.
I think you do get to a certain age and start to go, I don't know why I have worried about these things. So they're actually, 2020 hindsight and all that. I mean, even in my 40s, I was like, oh, I don't know why I worried about those things. And now I'm about to be 55 and I'm at the next level of, I don't know why I was worried about any of that.
Yes.
It's just such a small thing. So it's certainly just a wisdom
Mm,
and of lessons of learned experience.
mm,
Um, and I do think I do, I do think our system um, has also fashioned us into people where we need to be successful.
mm.
So, it was
Yes.
you were like successful as a house and a fancy car and and there's a lot of marketing behind that. But
Whatever.
yeah, it all, yeah. And in the 80s and 90s, it all got very externally focused on material things. And I think that is shifting too.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So where people can find you on Instagram, I see, and Facebook, and have you got little Facebook groups that they could join, or how does the system work if they want to find you for some help or some coaching?
I have not got a Facebook group and I probably should. Yeah, well, I don't know, social media, I have a love-hate relationship with it, but um but yes, they can find me on Instagram and Facebook. Um I do have a business page, but I'm also just really active on my personal one, Angela Lucia Bennett. And then I have my website, which is
Yeah. Oh,
www.alignedlivinghub.com.
all right, and they can
Mm.
find out a little
And
bit.
that's, yeah, I've got some free resources on there, and that's where you can book. Well, you can go on there and sign up for my monthly newsletter, which I just do 2 emails a month. We've got a really fun theme going this year. So Jim Quick, who's a brain um, kind of guru, put a post up and it said, I think it might have been at the beginning of the year, but it was eat like you love yourself, speak like you love yourself, move like you love yourself. 5 or 6 things. So I thought, oh God, what a great, it was right around that time of New Year's resolutions where everybody makes grandiose plans and completely fails and therefore teaches themselves again what a failure they are. But, so I thought, what a great idea, because you might not have any grandiose external goals. So why don't we just take this idea from Jim Quick of eating like we love ourselves, you know, and you contributed to that one. And at the moment we're doing Speak Like You Love Yourself. So it's all about your internal talk to yourself. So you can sign up for that newsletter there. Yeah, and book a discovery call through there. But yeah, that's where you go to do all of that. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And I know that my listeners will get a lot of knowledge and information from our chat together today. And I hope that some of them, if they're in that right space that needs some guidance, take their plunge and call you and get in touch and let me know if they do.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Linda. I've really enjoyed our chat, and thanks for the opportunity.
All right. Well, I'll get this podcast out probably by the end of this week, Angela. So we'll have some marketing going on. All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye.